Does anybody know what happened to rosé? Like 10 years ago, nobody was drinking rosé. It was considered like lower quality and kind of cheap. And then, like 5 years ago, suddenly there was this rosé all day movement and everyone was drinking rosé. Hi, friends. My name is Sarah. I'm a certified sommelier and host of the Wine CEO podcast show. And each week on this channel, I focus on a different wine related topic, helping make wine more fun and approachable and a little less intimidating for the average consumer. This week on the podcast, I am chatting with two authors of Rosé Revolution, an awesome new book that just came out that talks about this rise to fame that rosé has had. Jens and Rasmus are incredibly knowledgeable about rosé because they traveled the world speaking with so many pivotal winemakers who were really a huge part of rosé's rise to fame. So let's dive into my conversation today with the co-authors of Rosé Revolution. CEO podcast listeners, I am so excited because today we are talking about a really incredible book that just launched in November of 2024. And I am joined today by Rasmus Emborg and Jens Honoré, the co-authors of Rosé Revolution. So this new book is all about the rise of rosé wine, top producers who have been most influential in this movement. Rasmus is an accomplished journalist who also owns a winery in Provence. We're going to learn a little bit more about that today. And Jens is an acclaimed photographer who's published many books and is also a huge wine enthusiast. So really excited, Jens and Rasmus, to have you on the show. Welcome to the Wine CEO podcast.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Great to be here.
Yes, thank you. I think this book is so timely because you gentlemen brought it out. And I mean, I've seen such a rise in rosé over the last couple of years. I think we can all agree seeing rosé pop up everywhere on wine lists and restaurants, in the, grocery stores. There's kind of been this rosé all day fanfare for years, right? And I think rosé has been kind of misunderstood or discounted for many years in the wine industry. And I love your book because I think what you did is really highlight some exceptional producers that have been really paving the way for outstanding rosé that consumers can understand is, really an incredible wine. So first of all, I just love, maybe Rasmus, maybe you can tell us what inspired Rosé Revolution, what made you want to write this book, where'd the story come from? Kind of just dive in and tell us a little background.
Yeah, I would like to. And thanks for having us, Sarah. And thanks for catching the idea that's behind the book, telling this fascinating story about how rosé has been developing for the past couple of decades. Well, from my perspective, and to cut it short, 12 years ago, my wife and I, we bought a small vineyard in Provence. I think you mentioned that. Provence is the heartland of rosé. More than 90% of wine production in Provence is rosé. And you can say for good reason, I started drinking this stuff. And I started exploring the world of rosé day by day, glass by glass. And as I got to know some of the region's best producers, I began to see this incredible effort and artistry that went into making a truly great rosé. It's a pale wine that for many years was looked down upon, ignored by experts. But during the past years, this wine has been undergoing a fascinating development. When it comes to quality, when it comes to recognition, and when it comes to popularity and sales. And I witnessed this development firsthand and got fascinated by this, you can say, this ugly duckling transformation that reflects how perceptions of this wine have shifted dramatically. And, that transformation, that story deserved to be told. And this is basically, here it is. That's what the book is about.
I love that. And I love that you're highlighting it. There was a social media post that came out maybe last year or the year before where I think someone was trying to share that the color of rosé could determine maybe the quality or the sweetness style. And I remember it causing just such an uproar across Instagram and social media because it just helped everyone realize what a misconception, what misunderstanding and confusion there is. I mean, I think the average consumer doesn't really know much about rosé. And I think sometimes they look at the color and they get confused because there's such variety out there, right? And one of the things that I loved in the book is that you highlighted 13 different producers that had unique styles based on the grapes of their region and their personal style, but it was
really highlighting high quality in the production of these wines. So Jens, maybe you can tell us a little bit. How did you select these 13 producers? How did you decide where in the world you were going to highlight these folks? I know you did a lot of travels, so maybe let us know about these 13 that you highlighted in the book.
Yes, sure, certainly. I just want to say also that at Rasmus, we are old high school buddies, and we kind of follow each other's careers for many, many years. And then when Rasmus bought that vineyard, and came up with the idea, I just jumped the bandwagon right away and said, I want to be part of this. And so that brought us onto that huge work that you do, because I work in advertising. So pre-production is very key to making a good product. And we spent a lot of time researching about how to kind of make the concept of what Rosé is today, and also kind of emphasize that it's a global thing. It's not a French thing or an American thing or a German thing. But of course, we want to emphasize some of the big kind of old world wine producing countries, and then also include the new world, because I live in America. So we want to have part of that as well. And then, of course, as Rasmus mentioned, the kind of the cornerstone of what happened with Rosé wine took place in Provence. So that's, of course, important to have some of those kind of key producers coming from there. And that's kind of we kind of went around. So we included Spain, Italy, even Germany, and then also all the areas of France, Languedoc, Champagne, also show that actually there's certain areas where you're only allowed to produce rosé wine. Talking about the color, we can get into that later. Tavel is, of course, a very important part to us who loves wine. And then, of course, America. And since I'm a New Yorker, I want to include like an East Coast producer, which was not easy, as you probably know. A lot Long Island, where I live, but I guess you have to be native Long Island to appreciate the wine out there. But we actually found one producer out in the Hamptons called Woodford, and then of course the West Coast was much easier. But again, we didn't want to go kind of the normal places, so we found a producer in Paso Robles, which is kind of equivalent to Languedoc in France, which has been known for this kind of mass producing grapes, but not really good wines. And then also we want to emphasize that when you sit with the book, whether you're in America or in Denmark, wherever you are, you should be able to buy those wines, because it was easy to find like some eclectic kind of producers, but you couldn't get the wines unless you were there, or, especially with the Long Island things, you can go to, I don't know where you were based in the country, Sarah, but, as you know, out there, you go out there for like a Saturday afternoon and then you buy the wines, and that's actually the only place you can buy the wine. So we want to have that kind of a mix of, high quality producers, but also available producers. And that's where we ended down with these 13 producers. And then also when you make a wine book like this, not only story wise, but also from a photographic kind of perspective, is like when you've been to one vineyard, you've kind of been to them all. So we needed to kind of get different stories, different takes on how to make good wines. And it was very interesting for us to kind of dig down there. So that was a very, very big part of the book. Is actually before any photos or any word was written, we spent a lot of time doing research.
Definitely very clear as you're looking at the book, because I did recognize a few of the labels throughout the book, which I was excited to see. I learned a little more about some of the labels I was familiar with. But I also loved that there were some kind of hidden gems too, where maybe there were regions that would not have first come to mind, even when I was thinking of a rosé. And I loved the unique perspective from those winemakers as well. So I think you achieved that. And I love how much thought went into the preparation of making sure that it was really highlighting a variety of regions, a variety of grapes, and then also making sure that it was something that, to your point, regardless of where you're reading the book, you could find something in your area to be able to enjoy. I think that's key, because truly this book, I mean, I know I said it was beautiful before, but it's like the perfect coffee table book. Like you can just flip through the beautiful pages and you have incredible photographs of winemakers, and you really get to feel their emotion in the photos, and you see the wine and the wineries. But I mean, it's just this beautiful book that, I mean, would sit perfect on any coffee table or kitchen or anywhere. You can put it anywhere. I'm going to have it in my office because it's just absolutely beautiful. So yeah, love it from a knowledge perspective, but also an aesthetic perspective as well. Really beautiful. So Rasmus, in your opinion, what caused this rosé eruption? Because I think we all agree that, it's just been in the last few years, right, where we've really seen this incredible explosion around rosé. So did you see this happen in a certain year where sales started to take off? What brought about this rosé eruption?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons for this eruption. And I think if you had to look at the timing, I think you have to go back around 20 years and see what's happening there. In the beginning of the new century, you had these millennials starting to look into wine in another way than their parents. They didn't really care too much about grape variety or vintage, but they focused very much on quality and having a good experience in drinking this wine. At the same time, I mean, we've been seeing a development where there's demand for a lighter wine, for a wine that is not that heavy, as you may have experienced with some of the red wines you have drunk along the years. And I mean, just today, I read in my newspaper that about the new numbers for sales in the heartland of wine, France, and red wine is decreasing, and there's a higher demand for white wine, for rosé, and actually for alcohol also with a bit alcohol. And to be a bit more specific also, and look into these pioneers in this Rosé Revolution, because I think you have to give credit to some of the producers that have been true pioneers in this Rosé Revolution and has pushed forward this development. And I mean, you can't tell this story without mentioning one of them, who is Shin of Chateau des Clang. And I mean, actually, Chateau des Clang is located just 5 kilometers from my own small vineyard. And the Shin, he is just a great story because he's a man from a renowned Bordeaux wine family. And back in 2005, he sold the family estate in Margaux to purchase a chateau in Provence. I mean, Provence, a region that at the time was considered a low status wine area. And he wanted to produce an equally low status wine. And, you know, the wine establishment was shaking their heads and saying, "What are you doing?" But Le Chien, he did not care. He had a vision. He wanted to make rosé into a real wine. And I mean, to cut it short, today nobody's shaking their heads. Le Chien produces the most popular rosé wine in the world, Whispering Angel. This wine is more than a drink. It's become a phenomenon. And it's the best-selling French wine in the US, including all the reds and the whites. So if anybody is laughing today, it's Le Chien, and that's all the way to the bank, you can say. Also, I mean, he's really done it very successfully, and I mean, he's not the only one, but it's people, we call them pioneers. It's people like them who has helped pushing forward this development because they have invested also in developing the quality, and I think this is really important to be aware of, that this is also about developing the quality of rosé. But because, to be honest, rosé back in the old days, I mean, was not a really good wine. Well, some producers may have made a good wine, but there was a lot of bad rosé out there. What has happened the past 10, 15, 20 years is that pioneers like Le Chien has invested in the development of rosé wine. So the quality is better. It has, the recognition is higher, and it's spread. Popularity and sales is going up.
Some of the very important facts that Rasmus is coming with here is because Sashili didn't only see like there was a hole in the market. He saw that if you want to make like a true change, you have to come from quality. So he kind of combined all the good things from the color, the label. It's got an English name because he saw that was a big market in America, was kind of unfulfilled, and other producers actually followed that trend as well. And now he saw like rosé as we see it as a global thing, not a French thing. And he was the first to kind of combine all the very important things to make a huge success, but it's all on the shoulder of high quality. We don't have to forget that, because otherwise that would be like fluke. Like 2 years after, nobody would drink that because it doesn't taste good, right? So I think you can't emphasize enough how important he is, and also for us to have in the book, because he is like a pioneer, but he also took some of the things in that wine experts kind of looked down upon, that he was, really good at marketing. He's a sommelier himself. He doesn't kind of cater to sommeliers to kind of, approve his wine, so to speak, but because he had that knowledge, he's a really, really good winemaker. And so he set out to have that vision, and just look what happened. And I think that's fascinating.
I completely agree. And I think when you see the inspiration of his story and many others, I mean, what you see is exactly that: individuals who saw something as an opportunity in the industry and didn't let other people scare them away from it. Like, I think there was one producer in Italy I remember reading about in your book too. And she mentioned that, her family made this incredible rosé, but when folks would come to the winery to taste, they would often say, "Oh, no, that's okay. I don't want to try that one." And they would say, "No, please do. Trust us." And they would try her rosé and they were blown away, and they would love it because it was such high quality. And again, they had to slowly change perception, but that took time. And it also took perseverance. They didn't give up saying, I know that this is an amazing wine. It may not be popular right now, but I see an opportunity in the future. And I think it's incredible to now let them have the reward of their perseverance, right? That they put so much effort into it. I love it. Rasmus, you mentioned a moment ago that your small vineyard is in Provence. And so I'd love to hear a little bit of your perspective, because obviously not just as someone who loves wine and has been seeing this Rosé Revolution, but now someone who owns a vineyard in Provence, again, one of the, we could call it probably most important regions for rosé in the world. What type of grapes do you grow? What type of wine is made from these grapes? Obviously rosé, but tell us a little bit more about your specific winery you have.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. Well, we grow mainly Grenache and Shiraz, and almost all of the grapes are used for rosé wine, like all the other producers down in Provence. I mean, especially Grenache is important for rosé. It's the number one rosé grape in the world, bringing this typical flavor of peach that you find in many rosé wines, and also with a not very heavy color in the skin, which helps bringing this pale wine into the world. And then, yeah, all our grapes, they go to a cooperative that takes grapes from a lot of other small producers. And here they make a handful of different rosé wines with different grape combination, and some of them fermenting on steam tanks and others a bit in oak barrels and so on. But they all represent this typical Provence style of this pale, dry, and this crisp style. And this is a style that has become the most popular one all around the world during this Rosé Revolution, as we call it. And if you go to Long Island, if you go to California, if you go to Spain, if you go to a lot of places and see how rosé is developing, it's very much with the inspiration of this Provence style. Rosé.
I love it. So highlighting a really classic style and kind of that poster child for what rosé has been understood for a while. You mentioned kind of, the grape skins and the color. And I think that for me has been, again, one of the greatest misconceptions that consumers have seen around rosé. We mentioned earlier in the episode where some folks are not sure if the color has any determination of the sweetness factor. And so obviously you both did a lot of research. You met with a lot of winemakers. Jens, what did you find as you were meeting with all of these winemakers and maybe learning about misconceptions in the industry? What did you feel was the greatest misconception that you came across in this whole process?
Well, that's a great question because there's quite a few. And one of them is actually men our age, white men in the late 50s who have been drinking a lot of wine and just look down upon, as Rasmus mentioned before, because it's a subpar wine. That is one of the huge kind of obstacles for the wine, and it's been a hindrance for the as a wine category to evolve. But luckily, we have like younger generations coming, like my daughters, that love rosé wine, and they don't drink red wine. So I think that in many, many ways that also being conservative and being stubborn, especially red wine has cornered itself a little bit, and that's a shame because I love red wine too. But getting back to your question, I mean, one of the things is that people think that the color is determine what kind of quality the wine is, and you shouldn't laugh about it. I don't laugh at like in a kind of condescending way here at all. But I'll try to assassinate playing that you shouldn't be you can't drink wine if you're not a wine expert, because our book is actually based on you shouldn't be a wine expert to love wine. But the thing is that you have, first of all, you have wine in a clear bottle. That is the first kind of sign of that you don't know what you're doing. But at the same time, it's such a beautiful color, and you have really beautiful labeling, and you have the marketing aspect of most rosé wine, and one of the big brands today is based on that way more than you see in both even white wine, and especially in red wine, which like it's all about the content of the bottle. But however, as I said before, as we mentioned, that it is not a hindrance to kind of get a good wine. And I love that, as also coming have a background in advertising. I love that you can combine the two. So why don't you not drink a wine that is, and rosé is a very inclusive wine, and it's a kind of become like a celebratorian wine because champagne is so expensive, though, even though we have a champagne producer in the book. But we see a lot of young people use it as a way to celebrate. And I love that thing. And we all try to sit around the table on a restaurant and sitting with that big book, and people take forever to get that and one that. And you can just order a bottle of rosé wine and you can share that. And that was one important point for us to kind of single that out. However, we also found or some of the producers in the book, especially the one we have from Tavel, which is a really, really good producer. And the funny thing is that they also produce Sauvignon de Pape, which is like a king among red wine, one thing I love. And with the same grace, basically, you make a really high-end quality rosé wine. But I have a hard time selling now because, as Rasmus mentioned, it's a much darker looking wine and it's a kind of food-driven wine. But the person we have in the book, Honoré, which is also a fantastic story. They believe in the Rudolf Steiner principle. So, the top level uber organic stuff. I happen to believe in that too. I know you think it's a great story and they produce really, really good wine. And she has become like a pioneer to kind of fight for that kind of category of rosé wine, which actually to many people was the original one. So I think it's important for the book to have those kind of producers in, as part of the revolution, because they've always been there, and just because they don't look right shouldn't mean that you should not buy it. And with this book, we hope that people will understand that rosé actually has different ways of tasting, and you can use it different ways, and you can drink it all year round. So that's another very big misconception. And we all had like really bad rosé wine on a summer day, but because it was warm and it was a summer day, we drank it. But today we actually are able to find a really, really good rosé wine, and you can drink it all year round. Actually, I had rosé wine yesterday, and I'll have one today when we're done with a podcast, sitting down in the fridge. So it's all good.
I love it. I mean, you're completely right. Rosé is such a versatile wine and a great food pairing wine, right? I mean, especially when you consider different seasons. I mean, obviously it's cold and where we're all located right now, not as much in Florida, but a little cooler than, but you can still enjoy rosé because it's still a wonderful wine that you can enjoy throughout the year. And I love that you mentioned it's great for celebration too, as an alternative to maybe a more expensive sparkling option. And it really has kind of become that approachable wine that is bridging the gap between folks that might typically say, oh, I only like red or I only like white. It does kind of bridge that gap there so that you can order one bottle for the table and make a lot of folks happy. So I totally agree.
Also, what you see in the book is actually, which is one of the producers, was fascinating story we found on the Rioja, which is really old, traditional kind of area of Spanish winemaking, and some would say that it's way too conservative. I love Rioja. Well, we have a producer there in the book, and they won't release their rosé after 10 years of aging, which is another thing. People think that you have to drink it young. No, we had some wine tastings during making the book. That is, we had a wine that was from 1999. Can you believe that? And it was a fantastic experience. But it was also to emphasize that rosé wine can be really, really high quality, and it can stay there forever in your basement if you dare and if you have the patience for it.
I love that you mentioned that because you're totally right. I think the average consumer would say rosé is a wine they would not age, right? And I think as with any wine, you have to find the right producer, the right wine that's made in a certain style. And then okay, this is a wine that will age well and has the right components to age well. But it's great to hear that there are even some producers that are aging first and then releasing, right? Because there's great aging potential. If it's a wine that has a little more acid, maybe it has more tannin. And I agree, I love Rioja. So I'm going to have to, actually, I don't remember reading that one in the book. I'm going to have to go back and check that one out. There were so many great ones, but I will go back and check that out because that sounds like a great story. And I love older wines and getting to experience them as they age and develop. So that's a really cool one. So we've mentioned a couple of regions now, right? Traveled all over the world. You gentlemen visited a ton of different winemakers, got to experience a lot of really unique stories. I'm curious if maybe there was one region that surprised you. Maybe Rasmus, we'll start with you. Any region that surprised you, maybe you would not have thought about rosé in this region at all, or the particular winemaker had a story that just was completely out of left field you were shocked by?
Well, basically, there are 13 great stories in this book, and they all took us not by surprise, but we really got caught by the experience from visiting these people. They opened their doors, they served some wine, they cooked some food, and we spent some fantastic days with them, listening to them about their passion, about their craftsmanship, about their culture, and so on. This has been really, this has been really a great experience. So creating this book has definitely been an incredible journey, and yeah, we've learned a lot. Of course, we knew that Provence should be kind of a starting point, and for good reasons. A number of the producers in the book are from Provence. Just each producer is actually picked because they have a fascinating story on their own. They have a story that you can get into without getting into all the other stories. but each producer are also bringing a chapter to the full puzzle when telling the story of how Rosé has been developing. So, I mean, yeah, it's been a great journey, and we learned a lot. We learned that you can make, as I think Jens mentioned, you can make great rosé wine out of the sandy soil of Long Island. We learned that the rosé is a hit in Champagne, and actually some of the most expensive champagnes are rosé. We learned that biodynamic production is booming, not at least amongst the rosé wine producers, and especially, I mean, this ecological perspective, I think, is interesting also when talking about rosé, because I don't know about you, Sarah, but I think a lot of us are changing food habits. That, I mean, I don't eat that many red steaks anymore. I eat more fish, lighter meat. I eat more vegetables. And when eating this, I very often don't look for a red wine. I look for something that is lighter, maybe also cooler. And I think back to your question about what has caused this eruption, I think this is kind of a mega trend that has influenced a lot. And we visited a number of producers who also have turned that production into biodynamic or ecological production. So that was a great experience. And then I think we also learned that just because a wine looks good on Instagram and is served from a creatively designed bottle, it can still be a great wine. I mean, don't look down on it just because it looks good. It can also taste good. And yeah, while we experience a lot visiting all the producers around the world, and in a way, it's not fair to mention one experience from all the others, but yeah, I think Jens just mentioned one of them. We visited Domaine Champier down in Bandol, which is in the western part of Provence. And I mean, and we had a tasting, and it was just a great experience. We tasted a number of wines, and we thought actually this tasting was about to finish. And then Daniel, the winemaker, said, "Well, just wait a sec." And then he went out and came back with an extra bottle of wine, and he served it without showing us the vintage, the year that was on the bottle. And first, after serving the wine, he showed us that it was from 1979, and it was 45 years old. I mean, it was a mind-blowing experience, proving that also good rosé wine has an aging potential. And then, I mean, talking about misconceptions, did we put ice cubes into this wine? No, we did not. I mean, it was a great experience.
And also, I just want to emphasize what Rasmus is saying here, because I mean, I hope that you get that feeling when you see the book, that because it's hard to kind of mention one over the other, because the hospitality and the serendipity we had by meeting these people, we had those experiences that kind of came out of nowhere just by being there. And also want something I want to emphasize, and not to put ourselves on a high horse here, but every word and every photograph in the book is done by us. And that was kind of the bar. We set up pretty high there. So we kind of, when we asked people about, we kind of, found the Bruce we want to have in the book, and we reached out to them and said, that sounds fantastic. Yeah, we want to be part of that project, until they heard that we want to come by and have a sit down interview, photo session, and get access to everything in the vineyard. They were like, who are you again? Or because we're not wine experts, we're wine enthusiasts, really accomplish the needs of our fields. But we had that serendipity of meeting people and then meeting other people and get some of the so-called pioneers in the book. And by having them in the book, every door was open. And then it was just a joyride. It's a profound experience that was just like a joyride. It was called, the logistic was a nightmare and all that. But making that book, and as Rasmus mentioned, suddenly standing in the place where he's gone for 10 minutes and comes back with one of the 5 remaining bottles from 1979 and having a taste of that. It's just like one of those moments you just think, how come I'm that lucky, And I hope that you get that feeling when you read the book about the profoundness and about the far work that goes into making a good bottle of rosé wine.
I definitely felt it. I think between the incredible pictures, the written word that shares such emotion from these winemakers, it was so apparent to me. You get such a genuine emotional experience reading the book and flipping through the pages. So I'm only one reader, but I can definitely say that you hit the mark and exceeded it. And I don't think there's anything really like this in the market today, right? That focus so much on rosé and its rise to popularity. So you truly fit such an incredible opportunity that was needed in the market. And I'm so glad that you did, because it sounds like you had a wonderful life-changing experience writing the book and meeting these winemakers, and then also getting to share that with all of us so that we can experience it from the comfort of our homes. But hopefully through that, be inspired to go buy these wines and experience a glass of them and reading the book alongside, enjoying the wine, and maybe traveling to these regions and visiting these winemakers and getting to enjoy their wineries as well. So where can folks learn a little bit more about Rosé Revolution and maybe buy a copy if they wanted to go out and do that today?
Well, you can go online and buy the book pretty much anywhere: Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Simon and Schuster. So just please, go online and buy the book. And then, of course, a lot of nationwide, a lot of our independent bookstores has actually purchased the book, and it's sold out from our publisher. And then hopefully, it will stay that way. And so that's how you get to the book. And if you live in a place where you don't have that kind of bookstore, you just go online and order from one of those places: Simon & Schuster, as I said, Amazon, or Barnes and Nobles. So it is available, in a very easy way.
Yeah. It's been really a great experience. I mean, making this book, it's been a lot of hard work as well, a lot of traveling around, but we really hope that this joyride also is something that you get the idea of when you read the book, and it's definitely been our ambition to make this a book that is unsnobbish, inclusive, actually just like the wine. You don't have to be an expert to read the book, and in that way we think we have made a book that kind of pays credit to the wine being just like the wine, a good friend, something that gives you not only a good tasting experience, but also give you a good feeling, and is sort of a part of what you can call the good life. Because I think, this is also something which should strive for, having a good life. I mean, for sure, the world is not pink. A lot of bad things are happening out there, but I think we all also should go for the good moments, the good experiences. This is what we have done by making the book, and this is definitely what we hope the readers will experience when they get into the book.
I love
and it sounds like it's such a cliche to say, but the journey is the destination, and I hope that you get that feeling when you're sitting with the book, and also that we really want to emphasize, because as especially Hole in the Market, we saw Hole in the Market too for this book, because we did a lot of research about what it was existing literature about rosé wine, and honestly, it was somewhat not. It didn't have the same level we were trying to kind of achieve, because we want to make it easy, we want to make it fun. And the good thing is that all the winemakers in the book, they had a great experience of making wine. It was not like this kind of, it's kind of a magic, we don't know what's going on, and it's a kind of secret. No, they were just an open book, and I hope that you get that feeling when you're sitting with the book, that it's all done, in a way that is understandable. And then you, of course, see the different approaches. And also, one thing that I just want to mention, that not every word is written by Rasmus and every photograph is done by me. And we didn't have any sponsors. We rejected everything, because we want to stay independent, so we can write whatever we want to write and take whatever photos you want to take. And also, I decided to photograph all the winemakers on an old analog camera to kind of pay, it's like an homage to the winemakers, to respect them, because, as I said, it's not easy to make good rosé wine. It's not a spillable wine that is just like happened to be there. And we want to emphasize that. And I hope that you get that feeling when you're sitting with the book. And despite being independent and kind of rejecting any sponsorships for any winemakers, we had the luck to be re-invited to many of the winemakers. So some of them we've been to several times, because we just happened to get a great, not a friendship, that's a little bit too word, but they became like, kind of friends. And for us to be able to go back there and be there several times, and also want to make the book is done over a whole year, to kind of show that winemaking is actually all year round process, and all the hard work and the labor that goes into making a bottle of wine, because it is very, very easy just to kind of get seduced by the pink colors and the vineyard and the sunset, And I hope that you get that feeling when you're sitting with the book.
Definitely. It's so clear how much thought has gone into this. What was the timeline for you, gentlemen? I mean, how long was this process? When did you start from the idea to now having this book be out on the shelves for folks to buy?
Do you remember the pandemic?
Yes.
Actually, I mean, the idea of this book, I told you about how I got inspired by exploring the world of rosé, and I had this idea of making the book, and then actually I was sitting together with Jens, and a mutual good friend of ours, a Danish open face sandwich with herring and an aquavit, and which is a Danish tradition. And I told Jens about my idea, and he just, as he said, jumped into it. And this was actually, well, a number of years ago. It's before the pandemic, and the pandemic slowed it down a bit, and also, you remember all the traveling restrictions. So it took some time before we actually were able to get started. But then basically it's made in the year in 2023 and 2024. That's where we have made most of our journeys, and so it's still quite and actually the version that we now launched on the American market has been updated with the information on each producer. So it's updated with the information from 2024 as well.
Amazing.
Yeah, and also just want to emphasize that it became quite cumbersome to produce the book during the COVID things, because and looking back on it now, we were never discouraged by it, but it was just like some of the things we just sitting in a car somewhere and being told that, oh, by the way, this winemaker has got COVID, but it was just like it all worked out, and it's, and it should never be like an issue in the book, but it's more like a funny side story that they've actually produced where it was easy to get space on the aircraft, and I couldn't get a Rasmus to the United States because of COVID. It was just like, but once it all worked out, and the important thing is that it actually worked out the way it did, and also that the hospitality we met around these winemakers was just immense.
It was important for us to visit these producers also, as Jens said, during the seasons. Not at the same time. And of course, the harvest time in August, September was, of course, very important. But we also been in Long Island in a lot of snow in December and so on. And it, allow me to get back to kind of the craftsmanship it's behind making a good rosé, because I think this is also important part of the story about this development, is that in the old days, rosé wine was a kind of a byproduct to making a great rosé wine. The grape variety was picked to make a good red wine. The vineyards were located to give the best red wine. The harvest time was picked to give the best red wine. And this has changed. These producers that we are portraying, they choose the grape variety, they place the vineyard, and they pick the grapes at exact the day when they think they can produce the best rosé. And this is really important to understand also how the quality of rosé has developed the past year.
I love that. And I love that was a focus throughout the book, because I think, again, for someone who's maybe newer in wine, sometimes some of the information out there on rosé talks a lot about the, processes at Rosé de Saignée, how is it made, all these different technical terms that can kind of get in the way of just understanding the basics of how this winemaker, to your explanation there, is putting incredible care and time and effort into everything from the growth of the grapes, the positioning of the vineyard. How is this grape going to grow optimally to make an amazing rosé wine, right? Not trying to make a red or anything else. How are we making a great rosé wine? So I think the book was very approachable for wine enthusiasts of all levels, which makes it a really great and approachable book to be able to learn stories and appreciate these incredible wines and the great quality of rosé that we're seeing on a broad scale coming from the wine industry today. So Rasmus and Jens, this was amazing. Thank you so much for your time and for joining me on the Wine CEO podcast today. And I'll be sure to include all of the links about where folks can buy the book in the show notes for today's episode, and be able to share this on social media more so that folks get to experience this wonderful project that you both have spent so much time investing in.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right, friends, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jens and Rasmus. I had an awesome time chatting with them, and let me tell you, their book is absolutely beautiful. If you want to learn more about their book, head to the show notes so that you can go ahead and check out where you can shop for their book near you and order a copy. It is a beautiful coffee table book, but it's also a really great wealth of knowledge for a lot of rosé related wineries, as well as everything you really want to know about the rise that rosé has seen over the last few years. If you want to learn more about this episode or wine in general, don't forget to hit subscribe to my channel. You can send me an email, sarah@thewineceo.com, or send me a DM on Instagram @thewineceo, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon Music, please go ahead and give me a 5-star review. I would absolutely love it. That's the best way for new folks to find out about my show. Drop a comment, like, and subscribe to follow along. Until next week, friends, I hope you drink something new and delicious, and I will catch you all in the next episode of the Wine CEO Podcast.